Hey guys, Todd from Lowbrow Customs here again. Today we're going to put our new Lowbrow Customs 2-in-1 exhaust on this fine 2006 Harley-Davidson Sportster. Okay, here's what the head pipe looks like. It does have some threaded bungs on the back. Comes with a hardware pack. There is some included plugs to fill these holes because they did not have fuel injection until 2007. So this is the last year of the carbureted models. So if you have a carbureted model, you'll use these plugs. We'll put those in a sec here, we'll show you. And if you have a fuel injected bike, you'll be putting your O2 sensors into these threaded holes here. Once again, that's what the head pipe looks like. And it has this really nice muffler, cone shaped. Should produce some good power on this Sportster. Let's get started on removing the pipes that are on the bike now. All right, I like to use a real long extension. I've got a 1/2-inch socket that I basically kind of ground down. On some of the systems, like a stock system, you'll need to remove your heat shields. It makes it a lot easier to get to the 4 nuts that are attaching the pipes to the front and rear cylinder heads. On this bike, on this particular exhaust system, it looks like we won't need to remove the heat shields, which is a good thing. That'll save us some time here today. But I have ground this down for getting into tight spots. So you're going to have 2 fasteners, 2 nuts on the studs on the heads, front and rear. So that one wasn't very tight. Also, take a look at your the studs coming off of your heads. Where I'm removing these nuts from. If they look kind of corroded, it's a good idea to spray some lubrication on them before you start the job. Let them soak for a few minutes. As you can see, look how rusted that is. We will be replacing these nuts with new shiny ones. Okay, got the 2 rear ones off. And it looks like whoever installed this last system used 2 of the stock fasteners have a flange on them. That one does not. This one is kind of tricky to get to. I actually have an extension with a wobble end. And since we're kind of close to the motorcycle here where the painted part is, we'll go ahead and add another extension there. And there we go, there's our 4 nuts off. Okay, let's check out what else we need to do to get these off here. Looks like we have 4 bolts with probably some dog bones inside a channel here. We'll grab our 1/2-inch wrench for those, get them loosened up. And then once they're loosened, I'm going to switch to this ratcheting wrench because that'll make it go a little faster. It's kind of a tight spot to get your ratchet in there. Almost out. Probably should support that so it doesn't fall. There we go. There's our rear pipe. Now it looks like with these, it looks like we probably have enough room to get a ratchet in there. So let's try it. Oh, that's tight. That's not happy. She's a little rusty. Let's get a 6-point. Anytime you have fasteners with rounded off corners, it's advisable to use a 6-point versus a 12-point. We got some corrosion going on here. Oh boy, that's tight too. Oh, there she goes. And there we go. We got one more part to take off, that big honking bracket there. And you may notice that the bracket goes behind this cover. On the rubber mount models, all of them have the bracket behind this cover, so we'll take that off next. Okay, I've got a 5/16 Allen for this larger fastener here. Oh boy, that's a tight one. I would assume there's a torque spec on here, but that may have been put on with an impact, which I don't recommend using a impact when there's on something like this. Ah, red Loctite. Extra red Loctite on there. Sure hope they didn't Loctite the small ones here. Now we're going to go to a 3/16 for the two smaller ones. No Loctite on that one. Just a lot of corrode. Oh, maybe there was. Oh boy. That's pretty corroded, gang. Look at that. Okay, on the bottom one's behind this bracket. So I'm going to use a regular Allen wrench, and seeing how tight the other two were, I'm going to use an extension with a deep well socket to give myself some leverage, like so. Oh, yeah. So much for that program. It wasn't even that tight. Hey, there's the nut we lost from the exhaust. Yay. All right, so now that I've got that one loosened, I have a long 3/16 with a ball end. You might not everyone have one of those, but that's going to make my life a little easier to get this one off. I wouldn't want to break that free with a ball end because it's liable to, if it's really tight, it's liable to break the socket. And a bunch more red Loctite and a bunch more corrosion. Pay attention. Long one, short one. Long one goes on the top, short one goes on the bottom. Okay, now we can get to the fasteners for this bracket that was on the other exhaust system. All right, let's attempt to take these other three fasteners. Hopefully they didn't use as much Loctite on this one as they did that one. You know, I'm not opposed to red Loctite, but I think that was a little overkill on that one. And I know you're tempted to get your impact out for this stuff, but when you have a steel fastener in an aluminum threaded hole, you're better off to do it by hand. That way you can feel what's going on. No Loctite on that one. Okay. Okay, we have the one fastener left to get to that's up underneath here. And here's your standard size 5/16. Oh gee, imagine that. Mr. Vanson Hines doesn't want me to use that tool. Got to cut down one here. Well, I can kind of get that in there, but not really. Oh look, they put a hole in there so you can move the brake rod out of the way. T27 Torx. Some lubrication. Oh, look at that. Well, that was awfully nice of them to put a hole there, but I sure wish they would have put a hole right about there where I could have got a socket through there. A 3/8 drive, 5/16 Allen probably would have been a better plan of action than this. Okay, so now that we have the brake rod out of the way, we'll go ahead and we couldn't fit the socket. I don't have a short one of those. So they do make sockets for Allens that are like very short. I don't have that particular size. So we'll use the standard Allen wrench and our leverage. There she goes. Oh. And now we'll just have to muscle it off by hand because we still can't get anything in there. Sure glad whoever installed this bracket didn't Loctite these. We'll go ahead and use the ball end of this one, and we'll use this like a lever. We'll carefully remove that, because that seems to be going a little bit faster than going a turn, take it out, turn, turn, turn. That's a bird song, isn't it? And there we go. Now we're having some success. And there's your Vanson Hines bracket off the bike. Look at her. Look at her. Okay, I'm going to trial fit this to see where it's going to go. It's going to go to those 3 holes there. We're going to use 2 of the large fasteners we removed from the other bracket. And it looks like it'll probably be easier to go ahead and put our brake rod back on first. So utilizing my T27. And for you guys wondering what's going on with this little contraption here, this is one of my favorite tools. It's just a simple nut driver, but it has an end that you can put a ratchet on. Fancy, I know. Okay. Not possible to get it that tight with just this. Okay. Now, like I said, we're gonna utilize the 2 fasteners that were in the other bracket. There's our new bracket. Go ahead and get those started in there. Once again, our 5/16. I think we'll snug up the top one first, but not all the way, so we can get to the bottom one. Well, now that I've reattached the brake rod here, it just happens to be right in front of that fastener that I need to get to, and I really can't see any way to get to it other than if it wasn't so dang tight going back into the hole, I might be able to use thread it by hand and use the ball end. So I'm just gonna go ahead and drop this out of the way. It's only two fasteners. That should give us the room we need to get to that. And look at that, now we got plenty of room to get to that. Yeah, I think there was just a little bit of corrosion in that hole, so I couldn't thread it by hand. Okay, got those two fasteners there, nice and tight. Go ahead and put my front back on because we're done with that portion of the program. We got this little plate here, this electrical, or make sure you got that lined up. And we'll go ahead and final tighten those. Okay, now we're ready to put our cover back on. One other thing, as you're tightening these, be sure that the smaller hole right here is lined up with the threads for when we put the cover back on, because this fastener also goes through that bottom hole in conjunction with those two. So we are ready to put this cover back on. Once again, paying attention. Long screw in the top, short screw in the bottom. Obviously, the largest one goes here. And once again, we need our 3/16. There it is, for the two small ones. That one went in very nicely, along with our new bracket for the exhaust system. Getting all three of these down to the bottom, and then I'll go ahead and final tighten them. Don't overdo it on the little ones. Click. Okay, cover's back on. Now we're ready to take the flanges off of the old pipes, the flanges and the snap rings. We're going to put those on the new head pipe. That's where it attaches up here. You need to reuse your old parts. I'll grab one of the pipes here, and this is the part we're going to reuse. And I have these transmission pliers, works very well for removing these. You're just going to spread it open, pop it off like so, take your flange off like so. Okay, I just got done putting new seals, gaskets, whatever you want to call them, exhaust rings into the cylinder heads. I took out these ones I didn't agree with. They're not very thick. and replaced them with some stock Harley ones because they'll seal against the flange on the pipe here. So I've done front and rear. When you're putting new ones in, you gotta kind of be careful. They're kind of fragile, so you want to get it started in the hole and use your thumb and kind of push it in all the way around and make sure it's all the way. There's like a little step inside the head that it rests up against. So get those installed nice and clean and neat. And now we're ready to go ahead and get our head pipe ready for installation. We're gonna put the included plugs for the O2 sensors. Because this is a carbureted bike, we don't have any O2 sensors. The exhaust does come with some plugs in the hardware bag. That'll go in these two holes here. If you have O2 sensors, you'll be reinstalling those with just a dab of anti-seize on the threads of the O2 sensor, being careful not to put it on the part that is reading your exhaust gas. And the hardware bag does have some anti-seize to put on your O2 sensors. Once again, just on the threads, don't glob it on, not a whole big bunch, just get some on there so they don't get seized up in there if you ever need to change one if it fails. Also, if you have a later model, there's two different size O2 sensors. We do have some adapters on the website. These are for 18 millimeter, the plugs and the holes. We also have adapters that will have 18 millimeter and then 12 millimeter in the center. If you have the smaller, we have those available, smaller O2 sensors. We have those available on the website for purchase. Okay, so I checked these before we started rolling here, and I'm going to be using a 1-inch socket on the hex on this. Once again, I don't really see any reason to put anti-seize on these because they're not a sensor, they're just a plug. Oh, she's a tight one. She's a tight one too. All right, while using a socket on here, I noticed that we kind of have a hex on the bung that's welded in here with the threads, and this socket was kind of getting caught on that other hex and preventing me from fully tightening it. So I basically switched to a wrench, and that way I could see what's going on. I can see that I'm not catching that other hex there, and so we went ahead and final tightened the two bungs in there, the plugs for the O2 sensors that we're not using. Now the next thing we need to do is we're going to reinstall the clips and the flanges on here that attach to the cylinder heads. Now, as you notice, as this goes over here, it can slide up and down on there, so as to not ding up the finish on here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little piece of tape, and I'm just going to tape that on there. So now it can't slide up and down here and scratch that black finish while we put the clip on. Okay, so once again, we're going to use our internal ring snap ring pliers for transmissions to spread this open. And we're just going to go over top of that flange. Being careful not to open it up too much because you don't want to spread it out. And there, that's a nice fit there. And you'll notice that there's a little recess on that flange that when I take this tape off, this will slide up to that and keep it from coming off when it goes onto the motorcycle. So now we'll go ahead and do the other side. All right, so we'll go ahead and get our rear one on. Once again, piece of tape, protect it. Okay. If these rings are really distorted or really rusted, it's a good idea to change them. There we go. Oh good, that one seems to be pretty good. Fitting up against that ring nicely. The exhaust clamp. Okay, now we've got our O2 sensors plugs installed and our front and rear flanges installed. We can introduce her to the motorcycle and see if they like each other or not. All right, I got her up in there. I've determined this is a really tight fit with this forward control in the way. What I did was I got the back going first, like kind of slid the back up in place, and then kind of pulled the front one away from the fins on the head. And now, so it will fit. It's not that it won't fit. It's just a really tight going to get it up in there. But we did get it. So once again, be careful. I put a rag around here so this didn't bang against that. So now I have it up where it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off the flanges and get those lined up. All right, so you're going to slide these flanges up over the studs. It can be kind of difficult, so you can kind of wiggle the pipe a little bit. You want to get them started nice and even, front and rear. You don't want to put any nuts on until you have both the front and the rear. If you need to, you could take like a socket on an extension and kind of get it over the flange and maybe give it a little help. There we go, that's nice. I can see it went up there further on the threads. And then we'll go ahead and get our nuts started. Front and rear, once again, don't tighten front or rear until you have all 4 nuts on there. And another thing I've learned over the years from putting hundreds of exhaust systems on, these should thread on like melted butter. If it feels like it's crooked and it's not threading easily, stop, regroup, take a look. If you've taken other things apart on your bike, these, once again, are fine thread, not coarse thread. And I can see that the bottom one's started quite a bit more than the top one. So as I get ready to tighten these, I'm going to tighten the top first, and you want them to kind of go pull that flange on the pipe that's compressing that gasket evenly. So I got the 2 rear ones started. Go ahead and do the front. Look at that, see? Nice and easy, going right on. This other one's kind of difficult to get to. Sometimes it's easier to start this one by hand rather than using your socket. That one's starting easily. That's what we like to see. Also, I am using new nuts on here because the old ones were very corroded, as we saw earlier. That makes life a little easier too, because you have a nice new nut with good threads on it versus an old crusty rusty nut. Not the best plan of action. Now we can go ahead and start snugging these down. Once again, evenly front to rear. You're not going to just cram the rear on all the way. We're starting with this one. Then we're going to go to this one, do that a few turns. We're going to go back to this one, so kind of alternate. You can also see how much stud is coming through the nut. We'll give it a quick check here. Yeah, looks like it's going pretty even. That one's starting to get pretty tight, so we're going to stop there. Okay, now we'll move to the front. And we need our extension that's got a little wobble to it for this other one. And those are looking pretty even. again, back and forth, front to rear. On the real earlier Evo Sportsters, that particular flange was only about this thick, and it was easily warped or bent when tightening these. So if you have that style bike or you have that style clamp, you could see when I had these clamps off, they're way thick in the middle and then they taper down where the nuts go on. So Harley saw there was an issue, so they kind of corrected it, making this new style clamp. And see, now I can tell that as I go side to side, that one's feeling pretty tight. And this one's not, so that's okay. There we go, she's tightening down now. Again, don't overdo it. We're crushing that gasket without breaking anything. Okay, we'll go to the back side now, rear pipe. And once we get it all together and we get the muffler on, we get the bike running, once in a while you may find that you have to go back over and hit these one last time to make a nice seal. I've got them nice and tightened down now. We're going to go ahead and put the muffler on, and we're almost done. All right, so we're ready to put the muffler on. Clamp comes with the kit. You're going to loosen it up so you can slide it over the pipe, but don't loosen it so much that it may slide back and forth. That seems pretty good right there. I'm facing the socket head 3/16 up so I can get to it right from here to tighten it. And then you've got a couple of these kind of T-bolt arrangements. There's a channel on the back side of the muffler. It's wider in the middle to go ahead and slide those both in, front to rear. Those are going to line up with those two holes on the bracket we installed earlier. And we'll go ahead and get this on here. And I got a feeling it's going to be a real tight fit. All right, I've determined this is a pretty darn tight fit. I went ahead and took my T-bolts back out because basically what I'm doing is as I'm sliding it on there, I'm kind of rocking it back and forth, up and down to spread out the end of the pipe a little bit. And now that I've got it started, I don't want those in the way. We'll have to get them on afterwards. There she goes. Additionally, you may also find you can put the clamp on before or after. You can always take that apart. Now I've got this on there. Now I have to turn it to get this to line up. And once it goes on and spreads out, then it's going a little easier. That first time going on, I noticed it was very tight. So I don't think you're gonna have any problem with going too far to not be lined up with these holes back here. But there it is, maybe just a little more. And now I've got this flat of this lined up with that. I'm gonna go ahead and put these back in there. I'm just gonna have to pull this out to slide these in there. There's that one. There we go. Those lined up with the two holes on here. And then make sure that, like, sight it down here and see that this channel is orientated this way and this way, that it's flat up against this bracket, and it is. Then we've got a couple of flat washers and some nylocks that go on the T-bolts. Get that started. And then I'm going to use my ratchet wrench again because that's going to make it a little easier to tighten those up. So all we have left to do is make sure this is positioned where you're happy with where it's at. It's at the edge of the muffler. You're going to tighten that. You're going to tighten these two, and we'll be all set. We'll be ready to try it. Ratchet wrench on the back too, 1/2 inch. Nice and secure. Not trying to break the T-bolts, we're just trying to make sure they're tight. They are nylocks, they're not going to loosen up once they're tight. Okay, those are pretty good. Now back to our 3/16 on this clamp. Once again, we just need this tight. We don't need to break the clamp. Kind of looking at the back side to see how tight it is. Kind of a feel thing. Because I'm guessing if you keep cranking this, you can break this clamp. That's pretty tight there. Okay, all set. There she is. We'll go ahead and clean up our tool mess here. We'll go outside and fire it up, make some noise. Woo! Hey guys, just another wonderful sunny morning here in northern Ohio. We're gonna go ahead and fire up this Sportster so you can hear our new 2-in-1 exhaust pipe. Woo! Yeah! Let's give her a rep. Woo! Let's go for a ride! Not. Rolling, 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 keep them doggies rolling, roll hard! All right, we'll do it again if you want to. You're the director. I'm just the f***ing actor. It's time to go back to my trailer and make a muffin.
There's a real trailer there too. He's really gonna go to a trailer.
Take two.